Greetings. This is Time Rider at Chapter 4. It's been an interesting week here in Minnesota. If you follow the weather at all, you know we've had some of the coldest temperatures in like 30 years. Well, my pipes froze, and I spent 2 days without water, which was interesting to say the least. You don't realize how much you count on it until it's gone. On top of that, my little rotating display table broke, and Amazon was out of the one that I wanted. So while I wait for a new one to come from some place in the Far East, I have to settle for photos. On a positive note, my new airbrush arrived, and I'll attach a short review on the end of this video for those who are interested. One of my subscribers, Mark Hunter, sent me this number 73C Mercury Commuter. And thanks, Mark. I picked up the 62C in a lot of 36 castings. It cost me $2.30. Well, by all that is holy, I'm crazy about a Mercury, and I decided to rework them together. These are custom jobs because I cannot stand the baby crap green that Lesney put on them in the first place, and I decided to paint them blue instead. So, stick around and take a look at how they turned out. So, when you're doing 2 cars at once, you get to do everything twice. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. The Cougar basically had one post, and Matchbox uses a lot of different ways. The other half of the car was held in by the front grille and bumper assembly, which kind of notched into the body. The commuter was actually held in with 2 posts, and I'm using a 1/4-inch drill bit here on each of them to get these apart. And it was pretty straightforward. The Cougar windshield was held in with kind of a split post, so the drill kind of walked across it, so I used a grinder instead, and I just ground the post down until I was able to get the windshield out. The commuter, I was able to just use a regular drill bit to get that one out. Both of these cars were equipped with like a self-steering set of front wheels, where if you lean the car one way or another as you're rolling it, the wheel would turn in that direction. Removing the plastic suspension piece that both acted as a suspension and as a steering mechanism was the same on both cars. So I'm just going to show the one here. Again, just a 1/4-inch drill bit. Drill down the posts a little bit and then pop it off with a screwdriver. So here, using a 1/16-inch drill bit, I drill out the 2 posts on the commuter and then 1 post on the Cougar. A little drop of oil before I drill each hole is pretty typical for me. And of course, this is followed up by tapping the hole. And I do have people ask me periodically why I don't just let the button screw tap the hole. Well, the answer to that is simply I prefer to tap the hole with the tap. And if you feel the tap binding up, it's not a bad idea to back off a little bit. And of course, there's certainly nothing wrong with backing the tap out entirely and then cleaning the material channel and then reinserting the tap to finish your hole. As I said in a previous video, I have since gotten away from using the aerosol versions of Stripper. It's just not enough control, and I've had things on my desk ruined because of a little stripper overspray. And I've found that this way works just as good, if not even a little bit better. And I just dump a little stripper on like you saw. And I have a brush that I use specifically for this purpose and no other. And I just spread the stripper liberally on all of the painted surfaces. And then I'll usually leave it sit for 15 or 20 minutes. Longer if I think I need to. And sometimes you can see it actually coming off right away. Other times you cannot. You have to wait until you get it in the bath to know. My preference in cleaning castings is to use a soft, bristled brush in my rotary tool. It doesn't damage the casting at all. And, there are times when I still have to use picks and toothpicks and safety pins depending on the nature of the casting. But what I found is that these little soft wire brushes do a wonderful job of removing corrosion, getting rid of any remnant paint. They will get into the finer details like the taillights on this Cougar. One thing I will say, though, if you are doing this, you should wear some type of eye protection, because every now and again one of those little wire bristles does break off, and it will come up and hit you in the face. And if you don't have your eyes covered and you get hit in the eye with one of these, it's nothing pleasant, trust me. But you can use it on big surfaces, like I'm doing here on the roof of the Commuter, just to take down corrosion. You can get into windows with it. You can get into crevices like I'm doing here on the taillights. So now that I have the paint off, I'm looking at the casting, and it looks to me like the little bit on the right side was bent, the roof. It's not repeated on the back of the car, but certainly on the front of the car, it looks like there's a bulge right where my index finger is. And it's not very big. So actually what I did is I just used my thumb and I pressed on it, and it got a little bit straighter there. And I decided to give it another push. And now I think it looks pretty good. Might still be a little bulge there. One more try. See where I wind up. I think that's about as good as it's going to get without hammering on it. So now here I have all the parts. The windshield on the Commuter is a little scratched. I had a crack that I terminated with a hole. The interior is just dirty. Bottom's in actually pretty good shape. This little piece, of course, is bent a little bit. I'm going to have to heat that up and straighten it. Same with the Cougar. Bottom's a little dirty, but it should clean up with a wire brush. The windshield is, it's got some pitting in it. I don't know if there's anything I can do about that. I hate the interior, and of course it's got that wonderful trailer hitch on it. The suspension on this one is also bent a little bit. We'll get it all squared away, though. Since both of these cars are going to be a darker color, I went with gray. One of my subscribers had suggested, too, that acrylic dries pretty quick, so if you keep a cotton bud around soaked in thinner, if you do have a little bit of a problem, you can address it right away, like I'm doing here on the Commuter. Both of the base plates on these models were in really good condition. They had a little bit of light corrosion, which is to be expected. So I just basically went after it with the wire brush, and I'm not going to show both because I basically did the same thing on both of them, and the castings on the base were remarkably similar. Both had that kind of tread bright edging and tread bright on the rear. So anyway, here I am kind of cleaning up the base, hitting the bumpers, and then I also went after each grill. Because again, the soft wire brush, if it damages the casting, the damage is so minute that you can't even notice it. And it's wonderful for cleaning out grills and indentations like this where, you just have a hard time getting at it. And they do make these little rotating wheels in brass if you are really worried that you might be damaging the casting further. You can always use brass because brass is softer metal. I don't know what these are made out of, but they don't seem to scratch or anything, and I've used them, almost since the beginning when I first started restoring Matchbox. The color I picked for the Commuter was Tamiya X13 Metallic Blue. I had actually purchased this paint to work on the 55B police car, and I had altered it by adding some white and some medium blue, but I thought it was such a beautiful color I wanted to shoot it straight up on a casting one time, and I figured this was as good a time as any. And I'm really happy with the end result. I didn't take any footage of me shooting the paint on either car, and I apologize for that. My battery went dead. There was a number of other things going on around the house that I just shot them, and afterwards I took some photographs hoping that everybody would be happy with that. Now, the Cougar I shot with X23 Clear Blue, also a Tamiya product. And I had made a trip to the hobby store, and I picked this paint up because I thought it looked interesting, kind of like the Spectre Flame that people use on the Hot Wheels. But anyway, had I known I was going to use this on the Cougar, I probably would have painted the Cougar with white primer because it is a translucent paint. I think it might be interesting to try using this paint on a polished casting just to see how it turns out, but it would probably have to be blemish-free with no corrosion. Another thought I had is maybe laying down a base coat of silver and then spraying it over the silver. So I have a little bit of experimenting to do down the road. I like the clear paint. I'm going to have some fun with it, but this is how I used it this time. I know that there are modelers who don't use clear coat, but I think that the acrylic paint is incredibly fragile, and as a standalone, you bump it against anything, and next thing you know, you got a flea bite. And with my big old fat fingers, I'm constantly dropping things. So I always put a coat of clear coat on it. One, I think it really enhances the depth of color in the model, and two, it affords a layer of protection for the paint layer itself. And I still occasionally get a little chip that I have to fix, but everything gets at least one coat, sometimes more. And now everything gets to take a trip to Time Rider's Wheel and Tire. And what I'm making here is a tire wash, which is simply a little bit of gloss black and a whole lot of thinner. And what I want is a super watery mix, something like what you see in the bottom of that Solo cup. And then all I do is take my tires, and this will work on just about any black Matchbox tire, and I just throw them in the cup, give it a good shake, pull them out, and set them somewhere to dry. And guaranteed every tire is going to have a good side and a bad side. So once everything's dry and you're putting them back on the hubs or back on the axles, whichever, you just take a quick look and pick the best side that's available to you. So another good use for the tire wash is you can brush it on the grill and bumper to add some definition to the indentations. And I used it on both of these, and it's really watery, so it falls into the depressions really well. And then you just take a cotton bud and wipe off any excess, and what you wind up with is a little bit of contrast on the grill rails or anything else that you're looking to add some character to, I guess. I was going for something a little bit different on the Commuter, so what I did is I painted the center hubs the same color as the car, and then I'm going to use my axle kit, creating kind of a baby moon look on the final product. This really has not been my week for mechanical things. I did a great deal of detail work on both of these models, and when I got all done and looked at the video footage of it, it was almost all out of focus. I'm not even sure why. I have a fairly high-end camera, and I have the focus sent to autofocus on whatever is in the center of the screen, and when I got done and watched the video footage, pretty much all of it was out of focus. Sorry, this is the best I can do. So I guess in the last analysis, the best thing to do is just put this video out of its misery by showing you where we started. And I know there are those who are going to say, oh my gosh, these are really good castings, you shouldn't strip them and whatnot. Too late. Let's look at the final reveal. Supposedly I'm going to have my little rotating tables back tomorrow. We'll see. Here's how they turned out. This is the Matchbox 62C and 73C Mercury Commuter, Mercury Cougar. This is Time Rider at Chapter 4. I'll leave the light on for you. Keep watching if you want to see a review on my new airbrush. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I think the best place to start this review is with the problem that I had with my airbrush. I don't know how, but my airbrush became plugged. And if you look at this cutaway, this is your typical airbrush. The plug occurred in an area of the airbrush that I can't disassemble. And the only way that I could get the obstruction out was by jamming something into the hole. Well, I managed to free it up so that it would blow air. But I think that there's still remnants of whatever it is in there, and that's why the airbrush isn't working right. And I have some ideas on how I can fix it, but I've already ordered another airbrush, and I kind of like the one I have now a little bit better. So I got to thinking about how airbrushes work in general. The vast majority of us use what's called a double action airbrush, and basically how that works is the paint comes in one end and the air comes in the other. You push a knob down, and this allows the air to flow, and you pull the knob back and it allows the paint to flow, and it gives you a great deal of control in, as far as how much paint you're going to put on a particular area of a model. Now this allows for some really fine detail work, but when you're doing die cast, really all you're doing in the vast majority of the instances is laying one color down, and you're laying it down everywhere. The result was that I got splattered paint, and it didn't matter how I mixed the paint. And I had a lot of people advise me, well, use this or use that. And with all due respect to the tips people gave me, this isn't the first time I've used an airbrush. And my airbrush worked fantastic, right up until the moment it got plugged. I tried new needles, I tried different thinners, I tried new seats, I tried different mixtures, and it didn't matter. This was my end result, no matter what I did. So then I got to thinking, why are we using double action airbrushes? I understand why double action airbrushes exist. People do very, very interesting things when they're modeling with double action airbrushes. They do shading, among other things. But that's not what we're doing when we're doing die cast. In 99% of the die-cast restorations we do, we're just laying on paint. And we really only need to adjust the paint once. So I started researching single-action airbrushes, because I thought that might be the right route to go. I watched a review of the Iwata HP M1 single-action airbrush, and I have to be honest, I was very impressed. The problem is it's worth about $168, and I really don't want to spend $168 on an airbrush if I think that it might be what I'm looking for. This is the Master Model G36 Single Action Airbrush. $29.99. Comes with an added fixture for the hose and the wrench necessary to remove the seat from the needle. And just to show you how simple it is, I'm going to take it apart right here. I can clean this thing in about 10 minutes. Less if it's not particularly dirty. And that's all there is to it, right there. I usually keep a little bit of paint around that I've already mixed. That's why I got the R on there, because that's ready for the airbrush. I'm running about 22 pounds. I'll put some paint in the hopper, and I'm going to open it one full turn. The Iwata has numbers on it. This one does not, so I've just kind of played around with my pressures. And I'm actually running this particular section of the clip at 200%. But as you can see, I'm getting nice, even flow. No splatters. Now, one thing I have noticed is if it is going to splatter, it usually does it right when I first hit the trigger. So if you notice there, when I started shooting, I was not shooting at the spoon initially. A couple of things I noticed about using this: my finger does not get nearly as tired, nor does my hand, because I'm not having to push down and pull back against a spring, which actually is kind of an unnatural motion. All I'm doing is pushing down as if I was using a rattle can. And I get really good results. Does it ever splatter? Yeah, sure, it happens once in a while. That's why I keep a Q-tip handy. If it does start to splatter, that's how I clean the nozzle. Take a couple of shots away from the model, and away I go. Now I'm painting again. I already ordered my Iwata. If you have a good double action airbrush and it serves you well, I would never suggest that you stop using it. And I'm not even saying that double action airbrushes are a bad thing. All I'm suggesting, I guess, is that there's always more than one way to skin a cat. And I think I like this better than the double action because, from my mind, it's a lot less fiddly, it's easier to clean, and it accomplishes everything that I needed to accomplish. Now, if at some point I start doing modeling other than die-cast modeling, I might want to go back to a double action where I can have greater control over line width and things of that nature. But as long as I'm doing die-cast, I think a single action airbrush will do just fine. This is Time Rider at Chapter 4. Thanks for watching, and I'll leave a light on for you.